And who's likely to win tonight? Joining us now is Republican strategist and professor at Georgetown University, Blakeman. He's also a former senior advisor to President George W. Bush, also with us retired U.S. Army Colonel and CEO of Third Wave Communications, Patrick Murray. And sticking around here, we got to have the former Arizona Congressman with us, J.D. Hayward,
that's right,
host of Newsmax Prime. Delighted to have all of you here with us today. And J.D., first question goes to you.
Let me turn to my friend Brad. Brad, don't take this the wrong way, but I kind of consider you part of the Washington establishment. And so with Marco Rubio, Gainesville, who are you? Which pony are you backing now? Is it Kasich or Cruz, or are you looking at Trump's situation saying, well, he's the guy?
Well, JD, I have to work the numbers. You know better than anybody. It's the numbers that dictate how this thing is going to go. And we'll know pretty good tonight where this thing is going, whether Trump is going to be able to get to that 1237. If he's not, I don't know how you deny him if he's real close to getting that number, which I suspect he will. So yeah, I like to consider myself an establishment principled, traditional Republican. I don't like to think I'm stuck in the Beltway and part of the problem. I think I'm part of the solution. So I'm going to back whoever the nominee is. I don't think that a contested convention is going to help us win the general election. I'd rather see us coalesce behind the leader going into the convention.
So we got to make sure that we change your title next time. What was that? Establishment?
Principled. He's a good.
Something along those lines.
He's a great guy, but we've also got our friend Colonel Murray out there who ran for Congress from Virginia, and I'm interested in this, Colonel. What happened today in Brussels? I think Arizona is in the Trump column. Is there any way that the Brussels attack creates a boomlet in the Utah caucus tonight for Trump?
Well, J.D. Miranda, I don't think so. Trump's going to win Arizona hands down, and I think today's events in Brussels will only solidify that. He's going to take all 58 of those delegates. I think the biggest question for Utah comes down to the 50% threshold and whether or not Ted Cruz will be able to accomplish that. And I think by virtue of John Kasich, good man, governor of Ohio, but the fact that he's still in may detract from that. So I think you're going to wind up with those 40 delegates broken down between the three candidates, Trump or Cruz getting the majority.
But I want to get your opinion. How much of an influence do you think Mitt Romney's comments or criticism, it's been pretty harsh on Donald Trump, will help Ted Cruz in Utah tonight?
I don't think it's really going to help at all. I think that people aren't going to be paying attention to Mitt Romney like they wish, like he wishes they would. I think Mitt Romney is an afterthought nationally and in Utah. I don't think he's got the kind of coattails that would help Utah get over that 50% for Cruz, and that's really his mark tonight. If he doesn't get over the 50%, it becomes a proportional race. And Trump is the winner. He's going to be the big winner tonight because he'll take Arizona and he'll split up Utah.
And the interesting dynamic in Utah is the fact that while everybody's talked about Mitt, Colonel, and Mitt supporting Ted Cruz in this iteration, I guess he re-registered to vote in Utah, you've got the situation where the former governor, Mike Leavitt, has checked in behind Kasich. So that's kind of split everything up there in the Beehive State, has it not?
That's exactly right, and that goes back to my earlier point. It's going to devolve between the three candidates. If it were just the two between Trump and Cruz, we might see a sweep for Ted in the fact that he could get over 50%. I agree with the good Dr. Blakeman. I don't think Romney has any coattails, certainly not nationally, maybe a few in Utah. With the Mormon vote, but I don't think it's enough to carry it one way or the other for Ted Cruz.
Guys, and Miss Miranda, the thing is, the myth of the monolith, we often do it in terms of ethnicity. We've got to watch it, too, in terms of faith identification. Mm-hmm. Yes, within the LDS Church, there is a strong, I'll call it amnesty/open borders component, but there are also a whole lot of LDS voters who I used to represent in Arizona and elsewhere who are going, wait a minute, we've got real problems and we have to get serious about this. And that's why I think it's been interesting, Brad, that you've seen Ted Cruz remain so aggressive against Trump. Today, splitting hairs over NATO and involvement there, and Cruz, of course, basically accusing Trump of being part of that.
Yeah, we're going to talk more about that coming up in the second round of our roundtable.
Oh, good. Well, we'll confine it here to
so hold that thought,
because
I actually want to air some of those.
Yeah, fair enough. We'll get to that in just a second. But in terms of the border situation today, Brad, with what we've seen in Europe, I mean, I think the border issue and the fact that Trump got out on this thing first, while Cruz is doing a good job and working hard, the border issue, for all intents and purposes, belongs to the Donald, does it not?
There's no question about it. And, you know, Donald Trump brought it up in New Hampshire. He's not late to this. He's pretty much made his stake in securing our border, building that high wall, and limiting the type of immigration that Democrats want to see. Unless we can verify who's coming here, Donald Trump says they shouldn't come. I agree with him. Our experts have told us that our vetting process is not anywhere close to where it needs to be, and that should speak for itself. But Donald Trump owns the immigration issue.
Bradley Blakeman, Colonel Murray, I want you to stick around. As JD kind of alluded to, we're going to talk more about that Cruz-Trump battle that was kind of brewing today with some of their comments about NATO and whatnot.
Yeah, there's always a lot that goes into a campaign, especially a presidential campaign. It's like those episodes of the original Star Trek when Kirk and Spock would play that three-dimensional chess. And the good colonel and the good doctor have some insights on that, and I might have a few thoughts too.
Yeah. All right, stick around. Up next, what we talked about, Donald Trump. Is he right on the United States' involvement in NATO? Our roundtable will discuss that and much more, what the candidates had to say in reaction to the terror attacks in Brussels. And also want to remind you to stay tuned to Newsmax TV tonight, starting at 8 o'clock, for our special coverage of the primaries and caucuses in Utah and Arizona. Welcome back to Newsmax Now. The terrorist attacks in Brussels leave at least 34 people dead. Security remains at the forefront of everyone's minds, including the presidential candidates. Here's what some say needs to be done in the wake of today's terror attacks.
Then the president needs to move quickly. He needs to assemble a group of people who can dig in and begin to rebuild the intelligence that we need worldwide. And of course, at some point here, we need to confront ISIS and we need to destroy them.
I would be very, very tough on the borders, and I would be not allowing certain people to come into this country without absolute perfect documentation.
And we need to immediately halt the president's ill-advised plan to bring in tens of thousands of Syrian Muslim refugees.
We also have to keep working with Muslim nations because it's going to take a coalition to defeat ISIS, to shut down the arc of instability from North Africa to South Asia.
And that's where we want to welcome back our roundtable. Rejoining us for part two today, Republican strategist and professor at Georgetown University, Bradley Blakeman. Also with us, retired U.S. Army Colonel Patrick Murray. And sticking around, Newsmax Prime host J.D. Hayworth, also former congressman to Arizona.
And Miranda and gentlemen, on Monday, Donald Trump had what some are calling bad timing when he visited with Wolf Blitzer on CNN, insisting that the U.S. is paying in too much money in support of NATO.
Yes, because it's costing us too much money. And frankly, they have to put up more money. They're going to have to put some up also. We're paying disproportionately. It's too much. And frankly, it's a different world than it was when we originally conceived of the idea and everybody got together.
And then Ted Cruz, campaigning in D.C., criticized Trump's comments.
I would note that retreat from the world, the Obama-Clinton retreat from the world, is very much the retreat from the world that Donald Trump is advocating. Even Barack Obama hasn't gone so far as arguing for withdrawing from NATO the way Donald Trump has.
All right, so Colonel, your name and my name have both appeared on ballots in the past, and we understand what Ted is doing there, trying to make this dramatic, to insist on dramatic difference there with Donald Trump. But remember, in the first Gulf War, it was George H.W. Bush who said to all the nations of NATO and others in the alliance, hey, you got to step up and do your part financially as well as militarily. This is not abandoning NATO, is it?
That's exactly right, JD. Look, it's the political season. Trump is not calling for a pullout of NATO. You heard him. He's exactly correct when it comes to the fact that of 28 NATO countries, there's this 2% GDP threshold that all the NATO countries are supposed to kick in. You know how many countries are doing that of the 28? 2. The United States and Estonia. Belgium's not. The UK's not. Germany's not. None of the others are. That's Trump's point, and he's exactly right. And what you mentioned about going all the way back to the Gulf War, this has been a systemic problem with NATO countries for a long time. They're used to Uncle Sam taking care of them, and now the chickens are coming home to roost. Trump's right. They need to kick in their share of the 2% of their GDP for the defense budget for NATO.
Congressman, do you think Trump is right that they need to kick in
Actually, it's Bradley. He's the good doctor.
Yeah.
I'm the congressman.
Bradley, I'm sorry. Bradley, do you think that Trump is right? Does he have a valid point? Are we putting too much money into NATO and other people aren't putting their fair share in?
You bet. But, NATO's never seen anything like Donald Trump. Donald Trump is a businessman. He's a bottom line person. And the bottom line with Donald Trump is you kick in and you're a partner. And if you don't, then you're going to be treated differently. And I happen to agree with him, especially at times here in America where we're in debt. We have a job crisis in America still. We haven't fully recovered from the recession or the financial collapse of 2007. So Donald Trump, 100% right. Certainly NATO doesn't want to hear it, but a little tough love is in order. You got problems over there. We're willing to help, but you got to be an equal partner.
Well, it's interesting, Miranda, sitting here, it's in the House, we used to talk about unanimous consent, and it sounds like none of us are arguing among ourselves. We think there's some essential wisdom to Trump's point. But what I'm interested in, Colonel, is this. Will we have a situation where foreign policy experience with John Kasich is trying to push it, Ted Cruz is a member of the Senate, does that help these guys, or does Trump as the outsider and with these events happening, does it all redound to the benefit of the Trump train?
Well, I think it's Trump has this uncanny ability to make comments in very timely ways, and he did this with the NATO thing right before this Brussels attack. Look, none of these guys have any foreign policy experience, and Hillary has zero credibility too. ISIS came up under her when she was sextate with Barack Obama in Iraq. Joe Biden called Iraq one of the greatest success stories in the Obama administration. You know what? He's right. It's a great success story for ISIS, but not for us. And so when we're looking at foreign policy, we need to look at what we have with regard to Trump. At least he's been dealing with countries around the world, not necessarily in a foreign policy capacity, but nevertheless, I think that's worth some value.
Colonel Murray, Bradley Blakeman, Congressman J.D. Hayworth, and host of Newsmax Prime. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us. Pleasure to have you. And we want to hear from you. Again, we're asking for your reaction to the terror attacks today in Brussels. You can leave us a comment on our Facebook page, or you can tweet us at Newsmax Now. We'll air some of your comments coming up after the break. We'll be right back.